The Grim Tale of Grace Macabre, Chapter 57. "Hang on a second," Sara said. "I just had a thought. If iron coated in my blood is so harmful to them, then let's get some ready before we go in." "How?" Grace replied. "We don't have anything made of iron that can be used as a weapon." "That may not be true," Sara said. "I have an idea." Grace gave a resigned shrug. "Well, we've been winging it all day. Why stop now?" "I saw a toolkit in the trunk of your mom's car earlier," Sara said. She turned and ran back to the Audi. She rummaged around and came back with a flat-tipped screwdriver, a tire iron, and a large rag Jennifer used when cleaning the car. "Look! These are made of iron," she said, noting the tools. "We'll coat them in my blood, then use this rag as a bandage. This just might work." Sara took the edge of the screwdriver and sliced her forearm. It was especially painful to do considering the edge was dull. However, the gash was sufficient to produce enough blood to cover the tips of the screwdriver and the tire iron. She then had Grace wrap the cloth around the wound to staunch the flow of blood. They shared a quiet, grim moment. Then, Grace turned and pushed through the door. They stepped inside the vestibule and allowed the door to close silently behind them. There were no lights, leaving them completely in the dark. The vestibule was approximately 15 feet long, ending at the door that opened to the dance floor, or, as the Runaways called it, the sanctuary. The door to the sanctuary had a window that emitted a soft glow. Grace and Sara crept forward, weapons at the ready. They reached the door and peeked through and saw that the sanctuary was filled with candles, and the Runaways were standing around a young girl who was tied to the big wooden table. She realized that it was the same table where she had eaten and drank wine when she had first been accepted into the Runaways. Her stomach clenched in disgust. "Oh," she said reflexively at seeing the Runaways in their true forms. "They are hideous." Sara grimly nodded. She remembered them from the night that she was tied to the same table. The demon Grace had once loved was tall and had the diamond-shaped markings of a rattlesnake. He held his hands over the small girl, and he began chanting in some arcane language. His real voice matched his true serpentine countenance. Each word seemed spoken on a long breath, ending in a soft hiss. He reached a scaly, four-fingered hand inside his crimson robe and produced a large knife. The blade was surprisingly long. The handle was exquisitely carved into the shape of intertwined serpents. Spells were etched onto the steel blade. "That's the sacrificial dagger," Sara whispered. The look on her face indicated she remembered in visceral detail how it was used on her just 2 years earlier. "We have to get in there. Now." Grace pushed through the door and boldly stepped into the sanctuary, Sara right on her heels. Ari and the Runaways all turned to face them, clearly not expecting such an audacious move. The young girl, who had been sobbing and begging, screamed, "Help me, please! Oh, please, help me, help me!" Ari smacked the girl with his scaly hand to quieten her and fixed his snake eyes on them. His scaly lips pulled back into a smile that revealed needle-sharp fangs. He slowly licked them with a tongue that was black and clearly human, with the exception that it was much longer and forked at the end. It was a clear melding of human and snake. The others in the room glanced at Ari, awaiting his command. Grace took in each one of the runaways. 5 of them were all chimeras, hybrids of human and snake. Nephi, however, was different. She untied her robe and let it fall to the floor, leaving her nude and revealing her true form. She retained her long, dark hair and curvy figure. Her skin was deep red with tiny black spots, like those on a cheetah. 2 small curled horns, each resembling the horn of a goat, crowned her head. Her green eyes glowed with feral shine. Grace shot a quick, questioning look at Sara. Sara pointed at the 5 serpent demons. They are all demons who have chosen snake forms, but Nephi appears to be a succubus. She has the power to make men and women want her sexually, and if so, her power will be almost irresistible. Nephi stepped around the table and began to wriggle in a seductive dance as she made her way toward Grace and Sara. "You're early," she said, her voice low, throaty. "We're just now enjoying the appetizers." Grace held up the screwdriver, ready to do battle, but Nephi stopped dead in her tracks when she got a better look at Sara. Grace thought she saw a hint of concern on her face. "Well, what do we have here?" Nephi said, standing just 10 feet away. She made a face as if she smelled something foul. "Is this the naive little bitch we sacrificed in Louisiana? I thought you looked familiar in the restroom. How is it you're still alive?" The other runaways shot fitful glances at each other. Clearly, they were all surprised. Nephi sensed their amazement and shot them a stern glance over her shoulder before returning her gaze back on Sara. "Come, Ari," she said. "Look at this. Tell me what you think." Ari walked over, still holding the sacrificial dagger. He stopped beside Nephi and let his lidless eyes glide over Sara. "They're girls playing in a dangerous game," he said. Grace sensed that they were both trying to conceal their concern while they figured out what to do. If they're concerned, she thought, then they can feel fear. If they can feel fear, that means they can be hurt. "I wonder if the sacrifice will be sweeter the second time around," Ari said, pointing the dagger at Sara, attempting to intimidate. "I see you remember that night. The pain that this blade caused when we used it to savage you." Sara didn't take the bait. She stood strong and tall and fixed a defiant stare at Ari. "Since we're all here," Nephi said, "we might as well set about the task at hand." She turned to Ari, looking for his command. Ari turned and tossed the sacrificial dagger to Barba, who was covered in oily black scales with red speckles. "Finish the ritual while we take care of these little bitches. No one has ever sacrificed 2 of their kind at the same time. I'm curious to see how our God will reward us for this." Andre was covered in tan scales with brown stripes. He reached out his hand and perversely stroked Cindy's face. "We're running out of time," he said. "Let's set about this slaughter." Amy was covered in scarlet scales, and Salome's were almost completely white. They began to chant in an ancient, hissing language. Andre dipped his scaly finger into a small pot filled with purple liquid and drew an upside-down cross on Cindy's forehead. The girl screamed and began to plead again. Grace heard movement behind her and turned. Lily, the waitress, and Devon, the DJ, stepped into the sanctuary and stopped in utter surprise. Grace felt a surge of hope run through her. If they could believe what they were seeing, maybe they would help fight. At the very least, they could be a distraction, giving her and Sara a better chance of survival. Devon gave a confused look and said to Ari, "What do you want us to do?" Grace was stunned. Could he not see what was happening here? She knew that it would be extremely difficult to wrap your mind around seeing the true forms of the Runaways. But then it hit her. They already know the Runaways are demons. "Fight," Ari replied. With that command, Devon growled, and his face metamorphosed into a thing half cat, half human. Sharp fangs protruded from his snout. The fur on his face was golden, spotted like a leopard. He leaped toward Grace. Lily lurched toward Sara, simultaneously metamorphosing into something akin to a 5-foot-long centipede, covered in human skin. It skittered toward Sara on fleshy nubs, shedding its human clothes. Devon swiped at Grace with human hands that ended in sharp feline claws. His right hand raked across her shoulder as she stepped aside, batting away his left. She was surprised at how deftly she had moved, seeming to be able to interpret his attack. And while he had landed a blow that left 3 shallow cuts on her shoulder, she knew that she had intuitively moved in such a way that had saved her life. She grasped the screwdriver covered in Sara's blood and stabbed at Devon. He lithely pounced back, swatting her hand, nearly making her drop the screwdriver. Devon rushed in when he saw her fumble with it, and his claws sliced at her. She dropped to the floor and rolled away. Devon, not anticipating such a move, believing her inexperience would be her downfall, tripped over her legs and fell to the floor inches from Grace. "Stab him in the throat now," she thought. Grace did not know where that thought had come from, but she acted without hesitation. She rolled and slammed the screwdriver deep into Devon's throat. His eyes shot wide in astonishment. He let out a gurgled growl and grabbed at the screwdriver. She realized this move exposed his chest. She pulled the screwdriver from his neck and brought it down hard into his heart. His death scream sent flecks of blood into the air, some of it hitting her face. She grimaced in disgust as she wiped it away with the back of her hand. She crouched and turned her attention to the scene around her. Salome and Amy were chanting and hissing louder, more urgently. Andre was using his finger to draw more arcane symbols on the table around Cindy's head. Cindy had stopped screaming. Tears streamed down her face as she stared blankly. Her young mind had clearly experienced enough and closed itself off, leaving her in a catatonic state. Nephi moved closer to the battle raging with Sara and the worm thing that had once been Lily. She was clearly waiting for an opportunity to step in and finish off Sara. Grace sensed danger behind her and turned. Ari stood over her, a wicked smile playing across his snake face. His slit eyes burned red as his parting lips revealed a mouthful of needle-sharp teeth. She saw over his shoulder as Barba lifted the sacrificial blade, preparing to plunge it into Cindy's chest. Grace's heart slammed against her own chest, knowing that she was about to fail, but ready to die trying to save this girl. She prepared to lunge past Ari, knowing that her attempt to save Cindy would leave her exposed. However, just before she could move, gunfire boomed. Everyone in the room froze and turned in the direction from where the gunshot had come. Detective Madison stood on the bar, holding a smoking gun in her hand. Detectives Quill and Martin stood to one side, guns aimed at the demons before them. "Let the little girl go, Ari," Detective Madison said. Ari did not reply. He only glared back, his serpent eyes full of fury. Barbara continued to hold the blade over Cindy. Detective Madison pointed her gun at Barbara. "Don't do it, Barbara. One more move, and the next bullet goes in your head."